So my talk is called The End of Governance as We Know It, and I know this is a little clickbaity, I admit. However, what I promise you is at the end of this talk, what I want you to sort of get out of this is that the way we've been sort of pitched governance from the industry, I think it needs to die. I think that that whole concept needs to change a little bit. And so who am I? I'm as Sean mentioned, I'm head of product here at Metaphor. Metaphor is, the way we think about it, it's a social platform for data. So yes, of course, there's an aspect of governance that we deal with, but really, fundamentally, it is a catalog that allows everyone in the company to participate. That's the key, and I'll explain that a little bit more as we go along. Quick show of hands, how many folks here are basically doing a data governance type job? There you go. Great. How many folks who are, I don't know, data engineers, data scientists who are kind of forced into doing governance, forced into that type of stuff? Yeah, we see that. All right. So hopefully this will sort of make sense as we get into it. So if you've been in this governance role, one of the things that was kind of like the promise is that, hey, this is a platform for collaboration. Collaboration is that word plastered over every single governance tool that's out there. So that was the idea, that was the ideal. But let's get real. Silos exist. People do their own stuff within companies. And you can incentivize collaboration only so much. But naturally, just because of how silos are built, people are not inclined to work with each other because they're just doing their own thing. They are focused on things that they have to get done. And hence, collaboration just always takes a backseat. And so from that perspective, yes, you've put together a governance tool for collaboration, but naturally, it does not lend itself to be collaborative. The other big one, easiness of using the catalog, easiness of or simplicity of implementing the catalog, all of those things, you went in from a governance perspective to be able to try and solve this problem. Certainly at the end of the day, we want products, like even if we're implementing a product, we want products to be just that simple for end users to use. But here's the real story, that catalogs, unfortunately, are not at all easy to use. So I won't name names, but if you've been in this space, there are a couple of tools that you can sort of go out and buy right now. It would take you easily 6 to 8 months to even get up and running with the catalog. That's the normal thing. And unfortunately for end users, it tends to be an incredibly difficult thing to do. This happens to be a control center for a nuclear power plant. Now, do you need all of this? Of course not, right? Like if someone is just looking for an answer, how do we calculate revenue? How do we do such and such? Where do I find this data? That's all the questions they're asking. They need a simple answer. Why give them this overtly complicated system that they have to get trained on just to get some basic answers, right? And one of the common themes we keep hearing is like, oh, don't worry, we're updating our software to cloud and you can do all of this in cloud and it becomes that much easier. Guess what? It's the same thing. It's just revised version of the same kind of thing. So yes, if you're building out a big complex nuclear reactor, you do need the best and the most capable, dense software in terms of capabilities. But for the types of problem that we're trying to solve, we want to emphasize simplicity. The other part of a catalog that a catalog tries to solve is really about data literacy, right? Like people are looking for an answer, but unfortunately, one of the things that people, especially governance folks are kind of like hyper-focused on is basically chasing after a metric called coverage analytics, right? So coverage basically means like, hey, what percentage of my data is documented? So that means I've got columns, table or column level descriptions. I might have glossaries, et cetera, which is all well and good, right? Like that would be the most natural thing. Well, of course, if I document everything, people will know how to, find it and all of that stuff. But the problem, though, is that that does not actually answer the questions that people might have, and as the questions are evolving. So a lot of times, what we hear a lot from our customers is that, we've got a whole data team, they do support and all of that stuff, but more than 30% of their time is just doing data support. And guess what? They keep having to answer the same kind of question over and over and over again. So apart from being super inefficient, it's also unbelievably boring amount of work to do this type of stuff, right? And think about it, right? Like you're a extremely talented data engineer. You've done complex problems, and oh, guess what? Now I have to do the same old stuff again, right? So data literacy is one of those pieces that we absolutely want to help people with. Of course, this is the age-old thing. You're expecting you get maximum bang for your buck when you do all of these kind of things. But the reality in most catalog implementations we've seen all across the board is that there's an initial spike. People are like, oh, cool, we've got a new tool. But then over time, like the number of people using it just end up being just the data team, right? Like it's core data team, very, very technical folks, and no one else, certainly not the business. No one cares about, oh, let me log into this tool and find out some simple answer for something I'm looking at. So that's another huge problem, that initial promise of high ROI. And by the way, don't forget, these tools tend to be extremely expensive, right? Like you're talking about, I don't know, for a decent-sized company, at least $250,000, $500,000 worth of spend. And guess what? There's like 5 people using it on a regular basis. And so ultimately, that whole promise, especially as a data governance person, right, like that nirvana of, oh, we've reached absolute sort of peak of how we should be doing governance, unfortunately, has ended up being an exercise in chasing after metrics that no one kind of cares about, right? It's not focused on the end result, which is let's get answers very quickly to our end users. Let's allow them to search for stuff very, very simply and not bother with anything else, right? So that's the unfortunate reality of where governance has ended up being in the current world. So from our perspective, I think one of the pieces that we've seen a lot is that almost all of these tools that are out there, the governance practices, et cetera, has primarily been built just for the producer side of the house. That's the technical, highly technical folks. And unfortunately, that's not the right answer. I mean, yes, of course, you need to have a product that works for these folks. In fact, it needs to be extremely capable. It needs to be, fast and modern and really being like a power tool for these users. However, there is literally the rest of the company who has something or the other to do with data that are completely left out of this picture. So here's what we think that the next generation of governance needs to be able to address, right? So up on the top, it talks about things that really won't change. So if certainly trust, literacy, data democratization, all those things don't change. In this particular conference, you've heard about data products being a hot new thing. Absolutely, very, very important to do. And you should be thinking about data products for sure. But again, that's a problem that's only supply side. It only addresses the needs of the data producer. At best, what a data contract or a data product would do is essentially give that end user just a thumbs up saying, oh yeah, this is good to go. This product is good to go. But what about all the other discovery? What about the fact that, oh, by the way, these tables also exist in some other place, or the data somehow exists in other places. And oh, by the way, here's how you should be interpreting the quality results of that thing. And oh, by the way, did you know someone else is using the same thing and they're trying to solve the same use cases, et cetera? So all of that stuff that is more than just the pure technology of implementing data products and data contracts is something that a lot of people are not talking about. And that's where we really come in. So obviously within our platform, you can do all of those pieces. You can do contracts and products and search and discovery, et cetera. But what we are trying to focus on is really like a business outcome oriented thing. And I'll give you a very quick example of this, right? So earlier I was talking about data literacy, coverage analytics being one of those important metrics. So here's a compare and contrast for you, right? So we have some customers who absolutely go after that because it's an important enough thing. You want coverage, et cetera. But we had another customer who said, hey, we've tried this before. It doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because those descriptions might have been written by like the data engineering crowd or maybe a little bit of the analytics crowd. But the people asking questions, they have different use cases in mind. They have different perspectives that they are asking about. And so that standard static description that you've written is probably out of date by the time you wrote that, right? So what they did is change that around and said, hey, why don't we pick like the top 25 questions that are coming into our Slack channels or whatever, we'll go into Metaphor, type it out, plain English. We have natural language search. So you just say, how do we define revenue? Which dashboards do we find revenue? Those types of things. And we'll make sure right then that we go out and answer those questions within the tool. And we've got AI to even generate documentation, so you don't have to start from scratch. You can literally say, okay, I need a business glossary term for, I don't know, revenue, hit a button, and it'll figure out all the context about the tables, et cetera, and generate something, a starting point, if you will. So you don't have to look at a blank slate page and say, oh, here's how I'm going to define what my revenue thing looks like. Right? You could do that for tables, descriptions, column descriptions, et cetera. But basically what this customer of ours managed to do was they took the 25 most frequently asked questions in their organization in Slack, did a 2-hour session where they sat down with an analyst, with a BI person, et cetera, answered those questions inside a Metaphor, and have it be immediately available. So the next time someone comes into Slack and asks the questions, guess what? The answer is already there within the system, or some version of the answer. We use Gen AI right there in Slack, give them an answer. So they basically focused on solving the problem that people were asking instead of trying to figure out, okay, how much percentage coverage do I have? So that's one of those examples of an outcome-based things. The other piece, of course, is, and like I was mentioning, the primary problem in all of this stuff is we don't usually take care of the customer, right? Like as a data team, how many times do you actually end up speaking to an end customer, your BI user, who's just looking to know, hey, can I trust this dashboard, or what happens when this changes, et cetera? There's always like massive amounts of groups or roles in between that role, like if you're doing data engineering versus all the way on the other side. And so from our platform's perspective, we care to bring all of these people together. Now, they don't all see the same thing. Someone from a BI side will see an extremely simple application or a simple version of the data, of the metadata, if you will, but they can still ask the question like, hey, how do I do this? But on the other side, if you're a data engineer trying to actually figure out, okay, what's wrong? What was the question they asked? Now you get all the details that you need. You get to see column level lineage. You get to see all the gory details that you would normally need to do. But the point is it brings it all together, all of these different roles into one central hub. So it's just easier to coordinate and do sort of true collaboration, if you will. And then the last piece, this goes back to the whole silo thing. Again, I'll repeat that silos, like people are not incentivized to break silos. That's just not a part of things that happen within business. And so from our perspective, we absolutely want to make sure that there is organic discovery that happens. So if someone says, oh, I'm working on such and such a problem, or they're looking at some reports, could we find out 10 other people in the other part of the organization who are doing the same thing and perhaps make a connection for them? So that's where the social part of the social platform comes in. We bring that all together in one place. Ultimately, from our product perspective, we help customers solve these and a few other pieces as well. So certainly it's about search and discovery, but it's a whole new way of doing search and discovery. So you bring AI into the picture and get really high quality, next level answers about questions that you might have about data. In fact, in a lot of instances, you don't even need to come into the catalog to do discovery. You can literally sit on Slack and ask the questions, and you'll get the answers that you need. Like I mentioned, data literacy is an important piece. We absolutely understand that everyone hates to do documentation. Like, it's the most boring thing in the whole world. Or also, like things like, I've had a whole conversation on Slack. I want to make sure that I can persist that conversation because it's interesting, but no one sits down and takes notes and all that stuff. So we've got some capabilities right in Slack where you could say, okay, summarize this, go post it and attach it to a data set. So it's now institutional knowledge just available for everyone to see. Of course, there is governance. We do governance, but we think about it a lot differently than has been in the past. It's a very agile way of doing governance. And then at the end of the day, it is a power tool for the data team, right? So if you're looking for that next level, deep understanding of data, figuring out where things are, et cetera, all of those capabilities are available to you anyway. And with that, I'm happy to continue the conversation outside, and good talking to you all.